Thank you. So that was Georgie, Porgie, or Amor in Vienna by Rita Dove. Let's give a hand to our actors and our stage directions reader. Won't you show your reactions while I call them out one at a time? I'm going to start with recognizing in order of appearance, Schupanzig, played by Amy Shea.
Herzlichen Dank.
Please join me in welcoming Reese, played by Claire Brandenburg Taylor. Come on, Reese.
Thank you very much.
And join me in thanking next our Beethoven, played by Michael Jamanis.
Cattle! Cattle! Asses!
And George Bridgetower, played by Brendan Lopez Nunez.
Grazie, grazie. Mon merci.
And playing the handmaidens of Cronus, all three of them on his own, Mr. Rick Farrelly.
Thank you.
And playing the lovely barmaid Tusi, we have Liana Samuel.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, not finally, playing Bad Girls number 1 and 2, we have Claire Brandenburg Taylor. Again.
Thank you very much.
And finally, reading our stage directions and understudy for Bridge Tower, we have Gabriel Anthony Kemp.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
No.
Thank you. Okay, great. So I see a lot of applause in the chat. Thank you all. And Michael, here's what we're hearing. We're seeing great performances. Great job, Liana. Bravo, bravissimo, amazing. Okay, cool. So I'd like to bring on our presenter and of this whole thing, Dr. Michael Jamanis, founder of the Jamanis.
Hello. Whew.
All right.
I think I'm really ready for that Stein now. This is a whole different kind of performance, y'all. This is, whoo.
It sure is.
Yeah.
We want to go ahead and open it up to questions from you. And
I'd like to say something first. One thing.
Oh, sure.
Only because, you know, we were going to actually.
We're going to do the questions before you do something. I just want to let them know what to do. So if you have a question or you want to make a comment, you can raise your virtual hand, and our Zoom driver, Mr. Mark, is going to let us know that we have questions, and then we will call on you and like that. But Michael, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Well, I just wanted to say that it's so great to have everyone here. We were planning to do this. I don't know if you remember, pre-COVID, the concert series at Lancaster Catholic High in Lancaster, we were going to do a Bridge Tower meets Beethoven performance, and it was scheduled for February 21st, 2021. So here we are, and we're getting people from all over the continent, right? I believe. It seems like people West Coast, East Coast, Canada.
I think someone from Europe too.
Europe? Okay, well, you know, it's pretty amazing because you could not have come here if it were not done this way. So
Right.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for doing this.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. So what questions do you have for us? Dennis says, bravo, let's do it again. I agree, Dennis, but we're not going to do it again right now. But I do want to do it again.
Well, we are going to have another series in April. We're going to have and we're going to actually have a series. I'm going to have an April concert series, and it'll be celebrating poetry and music together because it is Poetry Month. And I'm going to rope in primarily women poets. And I know there are a few in this room, and I'm looking at one. So we will be having another series in April. So be on the lookout for that.
Yes. Yes. Okay, it looks like a question in the chat is from Amanda Godwin. She says, how known was the relationship between Beethoven and Bridgetower when they were working together? Like, was it a known thing at that time?
Well, okay, these kind of questions I'm not that knowledgeable of. And I know that, they played together and that Beethoven had a huge admiration for his playing. But I really don't know much beyond that, to be honest with you. And I welcome anyone of the, I know we have a few, yes.
I recommend this book, Amanda. Rita Dove's book. Rita Dove implies that, as you heard in the play, when Bridgetower debuted the piece, they became an item. It was big news. Bridgetower was getting to be well known as a prodigy. I mean, he was an adult by this time. So, yeah. And when they said that the Viennese upper class was sipping their chocolates, watching them, it was a public relationship.
Christine Shepard has an interesting note that Bridgetower died on her birthday, but not actually because it was 1860.
Okay.
And
Well, yes, he died on February 29th.
I know, that's what I was thinking. Leap year. And he lived in East London at the end of his life, and it was very, very on the down low. And I think he was not a wealthy person at all, even though he premiered Beethoven's Ninth Sonata. I think he was living in poverty, from what I understood.
Yeah. Grace is wondering what race relations were like in Vienna at that time. So this is not a period that I've researched, but again, if you look at Rita Dove's book, she implies that someone of Bridgetower's accomplishment would have been looked at as a surprise, that there was definitely racism and racial bias against people of color at that time.
Looks like we have someone's hand up in the chat there as well. Then.
Oh, great. Okay, let us know. I don't know. Maybe unmute them, Mark. Let them chat or speak
All right.
out.
This is, I apologize if I pronounce your name wrong, Marjolaine de Jager?
Marjolaine de Jager.
Okay, awesome.
There is a book coming out precisely on the whole life of George Bridgetower. It's a novel by the Congolese author Emmanuel Dongala, who has been living in this country for many, many years. And it's about the third novel, I believe, of his that's been translated. I have, for full disclosure, to admit that I'm the translator. And it is called The Bridgetower Sonata, or Sonata Mulatica.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's coming out in about a month. In fact, I wrote it in the chat early on at Schaffner Press in Tucson, Arizona. It is absolutely, it is a fascinating story. It's all based on the historical information that to all the places that Bridgetower had lived, had performed. And it's just amazing. The whole story with Beethoven is actually towards the end, and it's a very short piece. It was a very intense but short-lived relationship, because Beethoven, who was given to outbursts, but would always make up with the people he was angry with, was so angry with young George, who was then in his early 20s, that he never saw him again. And it was about a woman that Beethoven was deeply in love with, and that he felt George had insulted. And George tried for years to get back in his good graces and never did.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Marjolaine, would you please put it in the chat again where
Sure.
people can find it? Because so much has happened since you first put it in there.
Yes, and the interesting thing about the Kreutzer Sonata is that Kreutzer himself actually never played it. He thought it was crazy music and too difficult to play.
Yeah. I think outrageously incomprehensible. Did not understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, do you want to speak to that for a moment? Because, you know, it's well known that Kreutzer said it was unplayable, but obviously you've played it many times. So
Yeah.
why do you think he would say it was unplayable, and why do you think Bridgetower could play it?
Well, Kreutzer was very, he was I think at the time, the sonata was monumental in its difficulty. And when you look at, and Kreutzer is very famous today for his etudes. All the violin students, the one etude that's really famous, the Jack Benny. Now that's a lot different than then. I mean, the opening of the Kreutzer Sonata is very difficult. And so, and it's terrifying actually to play it. Like that chord. To get these chords in tune on the violin is very hard. And I suppose that someone who was so articulate and detailed as Kreutzer, I mean, this is just obviously a presumption, an assumption, but he would be scared to play those out of tune. So,
And George Bridgetower played it while the ink was still wet.
Yes.
And they said he had to improvise. So what parts of it do you think he might have been improvising?
Well, I think I really don't know. I have an idea. Probably what he did was when he heard the initial chord of the last movement, which you heard, he kind of went off and did something different with that. So I don't know if it's what he improvised is actually written down, because it goes right. We just start the race. So I don't know but it could be that, because I think they probably did read through the last movement first, because the last movement was written. He got the second movement. The second movement was the one where all the ink was wet. And the second movement is the theme and variations. And so maybe some of those variations were based on some of the improvisation.
Yes.
I mean, it's all speculation.
But we know he did improvise.
Oh yes, which is a very important thing for musicians to have. And who knows about Kreutzer? I mean, his thing is his story. Based on his etudes, and I mean, he was a brilliant violinist of the day, of a more aristocratic nature, and the fact that he was. The truth is, his name would sell copies. Beethoven was so excited that he called Simrock, the publisher, that, I'm dedicating it to Kreutzer because I like his benevolence in the arts and blah, blah, blah. And he was well known. He was the accepted one.
Got it.
So there we go.
Intimacy.
Yep.
Okay. But let me ask you this, because you told me, I think you would want to tell me this, that like Bach Chaconne, like there's so many versions of that, meaning for the violin, right? So that improvisation was part of what would have been expected of a violinist in that time, to be able to improvise on it. Am I getting that?
Yeah, I think you're getting, I don't know if the stories are getting a little mixed up. The Chaconne, the way Bach wrote the Chaconne is the Chaconne. But he does give room for improvisation in the arpeggio section. But but I do have to say, like in Beethoven's time, the improvisation was on the down low. It was dying down. Mozart, all his concertos for violin, he only wrote 5 of them, but they all have little fermatas where the orchestra rests on a cadence, like a 6/4 cadence, and then the violinists can do whatever they want. But then the violinists started getting criticized by the press, saying, those rogue Italians, what are they doing? And then people like Beethoven, he said, well, I'm not going to have this. But obviously he appreciated George Bridgetower's improvisation. But even Beethoven, with his violin concerto, he wrote out the cadenza It became kind of, okay, we're going to write it out. And then even so you don't mess with it, we're even
Yeah.
going to include, then Mendelssohn took it one step further. We're going to even include an accompaniment in the cadenza for the orchestra. So you cannot mess with this music.
Right.
So it
So
became like that.
a little bit more control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we're on a movement to change that, to swing
Right.
out of that.
Right. I just remember Francis Wong saying at one of these conversations about how in classical music, we think about improvisation as being fundamental to jazz, but him saying, wait, but there was a moment in classical music where European Western concert music, AKA classical music, where improvisation was valued and, expected of a player.
It got more and more controlled. You can look at it like through the early 20th century with the 12-tone system and all. I mean, then it really, okay.
Yeah. Then it gets rigidified.
Yes. I
Okay.
think
Looks like
great.
you have another hand up in the
Yeah.
chat here. Grace Johnson. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Cool. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for this. I am wondering, who are you all? the group of you that did this, and I'm wondering, Dr. Amanda Kemp, are you often using theater for talking about race? Because that's very exciting.
Aw, what a great question, Grace. We make so many presumptions about who knows us. So
We have such a big crowd here. This is great.
It is.
A lot of new friends.
yeah, so maybe we should start, Michael, because I joined you.
Yes. Well,
You want to say who you are or why?
yes, I'm a violinist, obviously, and I've been performing throughout the world as a classical violinist. But the past 10 years, I also have a program that I run in here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's an in the schools program. It's through the nonprofit Music for Everyone, and then I have started also working with Dr. Kemp to my left, and pursuing further, trying to put the violin now into more of a social justice platform, and also creating more of a vibrational aspect and healing aspect, and breaking down the walls of classical music with the violin. So this is why a lot of what Dr. Kemp, aka my wife, next to me, she's not next to me right now, but virtually. But that's what we like doing, and it's very meaningful for me, someone who grew up in the classical world, and having gone to all these kind of institutions of classical music, now to really find a calling, a higher calling for my work in music. And yes, I think it's one of the things, and you will hear, we're going to give an encore, by the way. So stick around. We're going to give an encore, and you'll hear a poem. It's basically improv off of Beethoven, but it's a poem by Robert Haydn. And this is something that I feel is very powerful, and it gets we do something called the Chaconne Emancipated too, where okay, I'm rambling.
You're going on, my husband.
I
Okay.
can go on and on, but that's who I am, Grace.
Thank you, Grace. And I'm just going to say real briefly, I am the founder of Theater for Transformation, Grace. So before I started Racial Justice from the Heart, I was the founder and, chief, whatever you want to call it, for Theater for Transformation, and a company dedicated to telling African-American stories. So for many years before I moved over into the role that maybe you're familiar with me in. And I wanted to just give a chance, Michael, before we go to the encore, if any of the actors wanted to say anything out loud.
Yeah.
I feel like you and I just started talking. So if any of the actors want to say anything, let's give them a chance. And then maybe we should go to the encore, if that's what you'd like to do.
Hi. I'm one of the actors. I'm Rich Tower. Hi.
Say how old you are.
I am 16 years old. I'm at McCaskey High. I'm in 10th grade, and I've been doing theaters for over half my life. Yeah. What? You're 16? You're 16? You don't look 16 yet. I know. I've looked like this since like 6th grade. It was been a trip. I sound like the same for many years. I think almost 5 now. It's surprising. But yeah.
You look a little different than when you were in 6th grade.
A little bit.
I
feel
remember
the
you
beard is
in
more
5th
flushed
grade and 4th grade. I've known you for a long time, mister.
You've known me since 3rd grade. I remember that. Because I remember I wanted to play the flute, and then I wanted to switch instruments over to the bass. And my music teacher said no, that I'd have to do the flute first, and I needed to try it for a year before I could switch. And then I got to play the bass, and you like kept rooting. You're like, hey, just let him play the bass because nobody else played the bass. So I started playing the bass, and I picked it up really quickly. And fast forward 7 years, and here I am now.
Awesome. Thank you for introducing yourself, Brendan, player of the double bass, Music for Everyone strings ensemble member for many years. Okay, I think I said enough. Good job. Michael, I'm afraid that I want people to hear your encore. So
Yes. So here, okay, and we're going to depart after the encore. We're just going to ride on out. I think there'll be some closing out music after the encore. And I just want to say, sign up for my newsletter if you want to find out about the April performances. And there's still a chance for you to donate to this event. So if you want the entire series, the recording and portion of the proceeds going to Crispus Attucks, donations for this event, we're going to keep it open for a little while for the end of the day. And then you'll have access to the recordings for the next 2 weeks of all 3 performances. So, and this encore, do you want to tell us a little bit about it, Amanda?
Sure. And I want you to put the link so people can donate in the chat. Just so maybe somebody. The reason it's because a portion of today's proceeds are going to Crispus Attucks Community Center, which is an important center in our community in Lancaster. It provides hot meals. They have a youth program. They have a cleanup and peace program that they're going to be starting in the spring. So we're very happy to be supporting Crispus Attucks, and we want you to join us to support them as well. So that's Crispus Attucks Community Center in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. When you give, we're giving a portion to them. Okay, so this poem is by Robert Hayden, who is, the first African-American to be the National Poet Laureate. Even before it was called that, he had it. And it's called Frederick Douglass. And it is so bad, meaning capital B, capital A, capital D. You really have to listen to it. And Michael's improvisation to it is amazing. Frederick Douglass by Robert Hayden. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth. When it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action. When it is finally one, when it is more than the gaudy mumbo jumbo of politicians.
the beautiful, needful,